You've seen the light, but what if it was never there to guide you, only to trap you, not gently, not softly, but slowly, carefully, dressed in words like healing, ascension, oneness, and all the while pulling you further from yourself? The false light trap. Why not everything spiritual is safe? Some truths are too heavy to see all at once, so the soul waits for that one crack, that one moment when the illusion burns just enough to let the real light through. You were told that light meant truth, that bright meant safe, that spiritual meant pure, but no one told you the brightest light can also be the most deceptive. There is a kind of light that doesn't warm, it binds, a kind of love that doesn't free, it flatters. It comforts the ego while starving the soul. Picture it, a quiet hallway. At the end, a golden glow. You walk toward it. You feel peace. You feel pulled. And then, the light wraps around your wrists, gently, almost kindly, but firmly. You don't scream, because it looks beautiful. That's the trap. Not every light was meant to guide. And maybe, just maybe, what hurt you in the name of love was never love at all. It was a lesson wrapped in radiance. But what if that radiant glow was just a mask? The invisible chains of performative spirituality. There's a kind of spirituality that looks perfect from the outside. Polished, peaceful, always saying the right thing, always radiating positivity. But when you get close, it's hollow. It shines bright, but it doesn't warm you. It echoes light, but doesn't hold you. That's the performance. We live in a time where being spiritual has become a costume, a brand, a backdrop for selfies, for quotes, for lifestyle. But real spirituality, the raw kind, the kind that breaks you open and puts you back together, that's quiet, that's intimate, that's often invisible. Sometimes, the ego doesn't fight the spiritual path. It just puts on the robes and learns the words. It hides behind mantras. It bows with grace. It talks about surrender, but never actually surrenders. Because it's not here for truth. It's here to be seen. But how many masks have we mistaken for wisdom? And so the chain tightens, not around your body, but around your frequency. Because when your soul is starving for truth, and all it gets is performance, it begins to go quiet. Not because it gave up, but because it knows you stopped listening. You can feel it in spaces that look full of light, but leave you more confused than clear, in words that sound divine, but carry the vibration of competition, of hierarchy, of control. Ask yourself this gently. If your spiritual path was a mirror, what would it reflect back at you? Would it show your soul softening? Would it show truth rising in you, even when it's uncomfortable? Or would it show a performance built to protect you from yourself? The dopamine illusion. Why feeling good isn't always divine. Not everything that feels good is healing you. Some things just distract you from what's still aching underneath. We've been conditioned to chase the high. The spiritual high, that euphoric hit after a meditation, that rush from a guru's gaze, that thrill of feeling connected. But the question is, connected to what? Sometimes it's not the divine we're connecting to, it's dopamine. The brain loves reward. And in the spiritual world, that reward often comes wrapped in incense, music, affirmation. But just like sugar, it gives you a spike, not a shift. It lifts you for a moment, and then it drops you, quietly. But you go back, again and again. Because it felt like elevation. But pleasure isn't alignment, excitement isn't truth, and not every blissful state is a sign you're expanding. Sometimes it's just your nervous system getting a fix. There are practices that light you up, but leave your soul untouched. There are teachers who make your skin tingle, but your heart tighten. There are experiences that feel divine, but numb you to the deeper work. Because dopamine can mimic divinity, it can flood your system with temporary light. But healing, real healing, is slower, quieter, less dramatic. It's not a peak, it's a return, a rooting. And if your spiritual path is all about the next feel good, you might be mistaking stimulation for transformation. True alignment doesn't rush. It doesn't demand. It doesn't promise a high. It invites you back to yourself, not to escape the pain, but to meet it with presence. You felt the love, the bliss, the peace, but something inside still felt off. Didn't it? The hidden frequency gap. When your vibration doesn't match the message, words can lie, but your body never does. You felt it. Someone speaks with all the right language. They say love, light, alignment, soul, but something inside you tenses. You hear the words, but the energy behind them, it doesn't feel clean. It doesn't feel safe, because words are not energy. You can say, I see you, with fear in your voice. You can say, I love you, while your heart is shut. You can teach about oneness while vibrating control, and your soul always knows the difference. This is the frequency gap. When what's being said doesn't match what's being sent, when there's a dissonance between the message and the energy. Your mind wants to believe, but your nervous system contracts, your stomach tightens, your breath shortens. That's not resistance, that's resonance revealing the truth. In a world where spiritual branding is everywhere, where messages are polished and presented like products, the most important thing is not what's said. It's what's carried. Truth has a weight. It has a tone. It has a texture. Sometimes you'll feel yourself pulling away from something that should feel right. And you'll wonder, am I resisting truth or am I sensing misalignment? Here's the shift. Resistance from the ego feels like fear of change. Disresonance from the soul feels like drain, like dullness, like disconnection. Your body is an antenna. It's always listening, not to words, but to frequencies. And when something doesn't match, it will tell you. Energy vampires in white robes, manipulation behind the smile. Not all light is gentle, and not every smile is safe. There are energies that wear white robes, that speak softly, that wrap their words in love. But when you leave their presence, you feel smaller, weaker, less clear. Like something was taken from you, even if you can't explain what. This is not fiction, it's frequency. Some beings, human or not, don't feed off your money, they feed off your light, off your openness, off the surrender you give, believing you're safe. Charisma can be a weapon, and in spiritual spaces it often is, because when someone knows how to radiate magnetism, they can draw you in. They can bypass your boundaries, and once they're inside, they can shape how you see yourself. You think it's your fault. You think you're not aligned enough, not evolved enough. But what if what you felt was never about you? What if the drain you feel isn't spiritual fatigue, but energetic theft? Here's the real test. After the session, after the group, after the ritual, do you feel more you, more present, more grounded in your own center, or do you feel confused, empty, unsettled? That's the body speaking. That's your soul whispering. Not all who wear light serve it. Some use love as a language of control. They call it compassion, but it manipulates. They say it's guidance, but it binds. Discernment isn't paranoia, it's protection. They told you this was healing, but what if it was sedation? The forgotten law of discernment. In the hunger for healing, we often forget to pause. We rush into teachings, practices, lineages. We say yes before we even feel the invitation. Because it sounds right, because everyone else is doing it, because it promises relief. But real discernment and never hurries. Spirituality became fast food, bite-sized truths, digestible mantras, instant transformation. But the soul doesn't operate on convenience. It doesn't move by hype. It moves by frequency, and frequency requires silence. There's a difference between what feels good and what expands you, between what comforts and what awakens, between what you want to hear and what your soul needs to feel. Discernment isn't about judging others. It's not about arrogance. It's not I know better. It's I can feel what's true for me. It's a subtle art, a quiet wisdom. It's the part of you that listens before the mind reacts, that pauses before following, that breathes before believing. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is stop and ask, what does my energy say about this? Not my fear, not my logic, not my need to belong, my energy. Because discernment is a frequency, and when you honor it, you're not closing your heart. You're refining your path. Not every angelic voice is divine, not every voice that sounds loving is coming from the light. Some speak in whispers, soft, soothing, filled with promise. They offer guidance. They say they're here to help. And yet, somewhere inside you, something tightens, something watches, something doesn't feel quite right. In the unseen world, just like in this one, not everything that glows is good. There are energies that use the language of light to gain entry. They speak of healing, alignment, purpose, but their frequency doesn't liberate. It infiltrates. It doesn't expand. It implants. And often, they come through channels, through meditations, through dream states, uninvited, unchecked, but welcomed, simply because they sounded divine. We forget that consent exists on an energetic level too. Just because a message arrives gently doesn't mean it's safe. Just because something calls itself a guide doesn't mean it serves your soul. Many have followed these voices and found themselves more fragmented, not more whole, more anxious, not more aligned. That's not connection, that's interference. So how do you know? You feel the aura of truth. Real guidance leaves you clear, grounded, still. It strengthens your inner authority. It doesn't override it. It invites. It doesn't invade. If the voice you're hearing makes you feel dependent, lesser, off-center, it's not divine, no matter how beautifully it speaks. Because truth doesn't just sound right, it feels coherent. It resonates without needing to convince. Why light alone is not enough. The myth of positive vibes only. You've heard it 1,000 times. Raise your vibe. Stay positive. Only good energy allowed. But behind those bright words, there's often a hidden shadow. A pressure to feel good all the time. A fear of anything that feels heavy, dark, or real. That's not healing. That's hiding. Because true light doesn't reject the dark. It holds it, integrates it, listens to it. The false light, however, avoids it, pretending pain is failure, sadness is weakness, and struggle is a sign you're out of alignment. But your soul knows better. Real elevation comes through the shadow, through the grief, through the breakdowns and the silences and the nights when nothing makes sense. Because those moments aren't blocks, they're gateways. The myth of positive vibes only is spiritual bypassing wrapped in glitter. It teaches you to fear your own depth, to avoid the sacred mess inside. But wholeness isn't found in constant light. It's found in balance, in embracing the storm, not just the sunrise. Even a seed knows, to grow, it must go underground. So why do we fear the soil that holds our soul's roots into the dark, into the unknown? That darkness isn't a mistake. It's the womb, the beginning, the place where transformation starts. So if you've been told to silence your pain, to just vibrate higher, ask yourself, whose voice is that really? Because truth doesn't shame your shadow. It meets it and says, you belong too. What if escaping the false light is what you came here for. The soul test, when the trap becomes the teacher. You weren't naive, you weren't weak, you were initiated. That moment when the light turned against you, when the words that once comforted began to confuse, that wasn't failure. It was a threshold, a soul test, one you didn't know you agreed to until you were already standing in the middle of it. Because sometimes the trap is the teacher. The false light doesn't just deceive, it reveals. Not all at once, but in pieces. In the dissonance you couldn't ignore, in the exhaustion you couldn't explain, in the ache that kept asking, why doesn't this feel right anymore? That's the moment your soul starts remembering. Pain has always been a portal. Not because suffering is noble, but because it breaks the illusion. It strips away the glittered lies, it makes space, raw, open space, for truth to return. You learn that not all who speak of love are loving, that not every community is communion, that not every teaching is timeless. But instead of closing, you begin to refine. You begin to listen with your whole being, not just your ears. You begin to feel frequencies instead of following faces. And from that place, from that sacred cracking open, your real awakening begins, not by chasing more light, but by becoming it. Not the kind that blinds, but the kind that burns clean, quiet, steady, from the inside out. The light lied, and that was the wake-up call. Not every lie sounds harsh. Some whisper softly, some wear white. Some hold your hand and tell you they've come to save you. But the deepest deception of the false light wasn't in its words, it was in what it promised. It promised comfort, not truth, certainty, not growth, obedience, not freedom. And maybe that's the point where everything began to shift. When you realized that safe wasn't sacred, that high vibe wasn't always honest, that light, without discernment, can blind just as easily as it can guide. You've seen it now, the masks, the illusions, the energy that looked divine but drained you, the community that spoke of unity while silencing your soul, and still, you didn't break. You remembered how to feel beyond the words, how to listen beneath the tone, how to trust your own vibration above anyone else's approval, because real awakening begins exactly here, when you stop searching for light outside you and start becoming the light that doesn't ask permission, the light that doesn't manipulate, the light that doesn't perform. If this message touched a part of you that's been waiting to be seen, write in the comments, I choose truth over illusion. That declaration shifts your vibration. That choice echoes far beyond this moment. Leave a like, subscribe to Echoes of the Path, and let yourself be guided, not by promises, but by presence. Watch the next video we've chosen for you. There's more truth waiting, and this time it doesn't need to shine to be real. This is not the end. It's the beginning of your light remembering itself. If this message touched something deep within you, it's because you already knew.